Let's begin again with some meditation. Sit comfortably. Relax your body, relax your mind. Remember all the things that you're worried about or frustrated about are not objects to be distracted to when you try to develop a good motivation. They're all impermanent. All the things that you hold as grasp to very tenaciously are changing. Things that worry you. And ultimately they're empty. So again, put your attention on the breathing. Bringing your attention away from the outer distractions. Say the distractions due to your sense consciousnesses. And the more subtle inner distractions within your mental consciousness to the different conceptualizing thoughts. Just be aware of the change of the breath. Recognize an inhalation as an inhalation, an exhalation as an exhalation. Try to practice the recognition of the clear light nature of your gross mental consciousness, as we've done many times before. Bring your attention further inward to your heart. Without thinking about the death process yet, which we'll do in a minute, just to, within the spaciousness of your mind, to recognize all the thoughts, the images that are coming, the distractions, are all like clouds within your mind. Transitory, or as we said before, adventitious, stains. Letting go of the conceptualizing dialogue again and again, the images, the thoughts. Focus on the subjective mind that has a nature of clear light. use the occurrence of whatever thoughts arise in your mind to recall that they could only arise if the mind had this clear light nature. Recalling that all living beings share this same nature of the mind, that we're able to recognize it to some degree now, to having a life of leisure and endowment, which itself is impermanent, that death is definite, and with every instant we're getting closer to that. Most of our life is spent not practicing the Dharma. To familiarize ourselves with the inevitability of the death process, the situation that it's like. We're going to, for the sake of sentient beings, to familiarize ourselves with this in general, in the sense of sutra, path, and as an imprint for tantric meditation, I'm going to meditate on the stages of the dissolution of the elements. I think at the time of death, although there are many, many distant signs that have come about, perhaps my senses have degenerated, my strength in general has gone down over many weeks or months in old age. Here at the time of death, the final death, the earth element begins to absorb, along with the form aggregate, as a first close sign. My eye faculty, the base of the eye consciousness, subtle matter within the eye, the back of the eyeballs, that loses its ability to sustain the eye consciousness. The basic mirror-like wisdom absorbs. The color of my body and its sense of fullness and healthiness degenerates. I start to look very withdrawn, even corpse-like. And to my mental consciousness, if I'm not distracted, there appears mirage-like vision as the earth element dissolves into the water element. Dissolves in the sense that the air sustaining, the wind sustaining the earth element is absorbing, and the water element has a moment of ascendancy. I think that next the water element will absorb into fire, and I will experience the firefly or spark-like appearance. But right now, within this appearance, I must meditate on emptiness, because at the time of the mother clear light that's coming, I want to be able to unite that, to join the sun clear light, the experience of having meditated on emptiness with a subtle, clear mind. So to recall that, use this mind, this mental consciousness, not to be distracted with fear or grasping. Recognize the I that we've clung to this lifetime, numberless lifetimes, has no basis in fact, the way that our mind conceives of it. The I is just a name that we impute to the five aggregates. There's no I that can be found within them, or other than without them. So the conceived object of this innate ego grasping is non-existent, is empty. And try to recall what you would have meditated on in meditation many times, in an ordinary meditation session and in tantric meditation, on a mere vacuity, like space, has no color, but is induced by this mind, this logical mind that has analyzed whether the object that we're conceiving to exist does in fact exist or not. After some time, the water element also begins to degenerate, to dissolve into the fire element. Now our ear faculty loses its ability to sustain the ear consciousness. The feeling aggregate, water-like feeling aggregate, absorbs. The basic wisdom of equality that recognizes the three kinds of feelings, pleasure, unpleasant, and neutral feelings, as basically feelings, equal in that sense. That basic kind of wisdom dissolves. The moisture of our eyes, the lubrication, the water of our mouth begins to dry up. And to our mental consciousness there appears a vision of smoke, perhaps billowing within an already filled area. And we recognize the water element is absorbing. Next, the fire element will absorb, and I'll see the fireflies. Previously, the earth element absorbed. I must remember emptiness at the time of death, at the time of the clear light. So I'm going to try to carry this mindfulness, use this subtler mind now. Instead of being fearful, grasping to this life, to meditate on emptiness. Think not only is the I empty, also the aggregates. The body that I conceive of as somehow findable, real, is itself just a concept, conventionally, just a name I attribute to this collection of parts. The arms, the legs, the torso, the head. Also feelings, compositional factors, discriminations. All of them are empty. Not only is the self empty, but the basis that we impute the self on has no solidity other than after some time, even though we're meditating that way, there'll be some motion as the earth, as the fire element begins to dissolve into the air element. The aggregate of discrimination, the basic wisdom of individual analysis begins to absorb. The mind is becoming subtler. The fire the warmth of the body, the digestion ceases. The heat begins to absorb from the feet and the head toward the heart, depending on our karma, where it begins. Our nose faculty loses the ability to sustain the nose consciousness. Breathing becomes erratic. Into our mental consciousness there's a vision of sparks or fireflies. I think previously there was the smoke-like vision when the water absorbed into fire. Next there'll be the dying butter lamp vision. I must remember emptiness. I must remember emptiness at the Mother Clear Light. So I'm going to meditate on emptiness again now. I think all phenomena, not only the self and our aggregates, but all other phenomena, permanent and impermanent, although they appear due to our individual karma, they have no intrinsic existence. They have solidity and cohesion and warmth and so forth due to our individual karma, but they don't inherently exist that way. All phenomena are empty of true existence. Nothing can be found when analyzed within its basis of designation, because all phenomena are dependent arisings. Although we can supersede the appearance of these sparks, fireflies, to our mind by concentrating on emptiness, again after some time as the elements, as the air element now itself begins to dissolve, we recognize the compositional factors aggregate, the gross mental factors absorbing, the basic wisdom of accomplishing activities, the tongue faculty and body faculty both absorb together. Our tongue thickens. The body can no longer even feel roughness and smoothness. And there appears to the mental consciousness a vision of a dying butter lamp. Not as though there's a container and a wick or something like that, but just the appearance, the light, flickering reddish blue. I think I've spent this life practicing Dharma. As I'm getting closer to death, now previously the fire element having absorbed, now the air element, next the white appearance will arise. At the time of death, final death of clear light, I must recall the meaning of emptiness. So again, think all phenomena, all the objects of attraction, of worry and repulsion, all the friends and family that I might be leaving behind, my own body, all are empty of true existence. like illusions. Because they're dependent arisings. They arise in dependence upon a basis of designation, a mind perceiving that in subconsistency, and simply imputing a name to it. The existence of that phenomena can't be found within any of those parts. The further the consciousness aggregate dissolves, basic wisdom of Dharma Dhatu, and the 80 indicative conceptions, even the thought of compassion, or the manifest form of bodhicitta, the supporting minds of bodhicitta are absorbing. Again, we have that same vision, the dying butter lamp. Finally, due to the airs in the right and left nadis above the heart, coming to the crown chakra, entering there and loosening it, due to all the airs of the 72,000 nadis having absorbed to those two side nadis, the white element at the crown descends, and I have the appearance of a subtler mind, manifestation of the subtler mind now partially within the central channel, the white clear appearance, white appearance. A basic sense of vacuity, no distracting minds. The ear consciousness, all the other senses have long before absorbed. And I can recognize that previously, I can recall previously the air element absorbed. Next there will be the red increase. I must meditate on emptiness to recognize the clear light of death is the meaning of emptiness. So to think this appearance to my mind does not exist inherently, arises because of causes and conditions, my own karma. There is no whiteness or moon-like brightness existing from outside, from its own side. Like all the other phenomena that existed in my life, seemingly findable from their own side, were mere appearances. And the airs below the heart, and the two right and left channels, descend to the base of the spine and the jewel chakra, loosening those chakras, entering into the central channel, ascending up to the navel chakra, where they also enter. And the red element at the navel chakra ascends up to the heart, slowly. There's the appearance of a greater vacuity now. The red increase. Copper reddish color, like the sky at dawn that's just been affected by the color of the sun. The white appearance preceded this. The black near attainment will come next. I must recognize this as emptiness to carry that to the clear light of death. So even this appearance is empty of true existence. The subtle appearance within a general vacuity, seeming huge, empty appearance to our mind. Even within this, we can meditate on emptiness of this appearance, and to our mind appears again just vacuity, no color. As the white and red drops meet at the heart chakra, the chakra opening, those drops entering into the indestructible drop at our heart, the subtler mind of black near attainment dawns. The red color of the vacuity begins to diminish, getting darker. Still there's some mindfulness. We can recognize that this appearance also is not truly existent. It arises because of causes and conditions, merely imputed by the mind to exist. I must remember emptiness at the time of death. To our mind, finally, this last appearance induced by our mindfulness of emptiness, before the second part of the black near attainment rises, and our mind falls into it as though a faint, no mindfulness. So finally, the subtlemost mind becomes manifest at our heart chakra. And the clear light of death dawns, the actual death. No sense of a subject, perceiver. No conceptualizing, distracting thoughts. And due to our familiarity with this appearance, a memory dawns in our mind now of the meaning of emptiness. And we try to unify, to join the sun clear light with the mother clear light. My mind stream will definitely experience this sooner or later. How wonderful if I could, due to the practice now, leave an imprint to be able to utilize this mother clear light at the time of death. Mind very blissful, cognizing the meaning of emptiness. All phenomena are empty of true existence. The conceived object of innate ego grasping is non-existent. Not thought. Those words, those phrases are not thought at this time. There's no inner conversation. But the memory of that, the remembering consciousness, is induced. Perhaps after some hours or days, there's a slight movement of the wind. The white and red drops separate. The white drop at the heart descends down to the secret place. The red drop ascends up to the nostrils through the central channel, side channels. The mind of black near attainment dawns, and suddenly we are a intermediate state being. We are in the bardo, or intermediate state, spontaneously born, according to our karma, if we're going to be born as a human, as a small child. All our faculties intact, with a body that is not obstructed by ordinary physical objects, can travel anywhere very, very quickly. But possibly a very, very fearful experience, no longer recalling our previous life, our previous identity. According to our karma, within 7 days or another 7 days, we may have a chance to take rebirth. We see a male and female, if we're going to be born as a human, our future mother and father, as though in embracing, sexual embrace. And out of attraction to the father, if we're going to be born as a female, or attraction to the mother, if we're going to be born as a male, we come closer, only out of desire to unify with them, seeing only the sense of the sexual organs. Our mind becomes angry, and we die from the bardo state. Again, there's the dissolution of the various elements up until the clear light. And as we exit the clear light of the bardo state, we enter into the fertilized egg and are reborn. I think in order to better understand this inevitability, I'm going to participate in the class tonight so that I can utilize that state, the time of death, to further my spiritual path for the welfare of sentient beings, to become a burden to them, to become eventually helpful to them, to attain enlightenment. So for that purpose, I'm going to participate in the class tonight. And then bring your attention back to the present. How do you find the meditation? Frank, how's your meditation? Do you find it useful, or? Because there's no calzone? There's no there's no snack. No, why distracting? Mm-hmm. That happens, doesn't it? I mean, I think by the force of habituation, by the force of familiarity, we have methods at our disposal where we can calm the mind more quickly. Just like, for instance, watching the breath. If you've done it over and over again, even that can induce that quiet state. Or looking at the clear light nature of the mind. First of all. David, how was your meditation? keep it away. So this is a meditation you can do, should do, at home. And I saw an interview with His Holiness the Dalai Lama by a photographer, some kind of freelance photographer that was on CNN some years ago. Maybe some of you saw it. I'm not sure if it was a half hour or an hour. And His Holiness mentioned that he meditated on this death process. I can't remember the number of times a day. I think he said 6 or 8 times a day. So you know why? Venerable? Because he just chose to do that, or what? What was the implication of that? Well, what I took from that, what do you think, Venerable Chukyi? Do you have an idea? Why he would say he meditated every day on that? Because he had certain tantric commitments every day to do a sadhana of certain deity, and in the Highest Yoga Tantra, that's the essential thing that has to be done. You evolve through this state, and you try to recognize the clear light of death, simulated clear light of death as the Dharmakaya, and then you evolve from that. You emanate within that as the Sambhogakaya when there's some movement from that instead of the ordinary bardo, and either as a very subtle light or as a syllable or something else according to the Tantra, and then with the motivation that you can't help all beings from that form. For instance, the rabbit over there. What's your rabbit's name? You told me. Dharmakaya? Dharmakaya. Very okay, very, very auspicious. This rabbit's a very lucky rabbit to hear all these, and so in order to help all beings, including rabbits and birdies and others, I'm going to emanate as a Nirmanakaya. So that's how one utilizes that. So in all those cases, like if you've had tantric initiations, other traditions that have commitment to do that sadhana every day, that's what I took him to mean by that. It wasn't just.
No, I did think of that, but I didn't think he would say that.
He wouldn't say that.
I thought his man, I felt like more he was in.
Right. Well, even when this photographer, this sort of interview photographer, when he asked His Holiness, he asked him all sorts of silly questions at different times. Like he asked him, "What do you think when you see, fashion show and all these half-naked ladies, on this, sort of like what a question," asked the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama said, to each one has his own, interests. For me, not interesting. And he asked him, "Have you ever danced?" And His Holiness looked so. You remember this interview? His Holiness looked so bored. No. Do you ever sing songs? No. Oh, he did. I mean, the interview went for there were many days when he interviewed him. We should see sometime. But when he asked him, when he was asking about, what are you meditating on now? What do you see now? When His Holiness had just said he had meditated on these stages of death. He said, what do you see now? His Holiness said, nothing. Ha ha. He started laughing. So maybe nothing, maybe emptiness. I don't know what His Holiness meant. So it's very worthwhile from a sutra point of view to reinforce that understanding of the inevitability of death, the uncertainty of the time of death, and that nothing will help at the time of death, to imagine this, and also in your tantric practice. This is an essential part of that. So, does anyone have any questions? Was that a question? Oh no, that was just the pain. Grown. Venerable, you have a question? No? Okay. Do you want, can I ask a question? So in everyday life, in the time of sleep, do we, or the time, the time of sleep, do we experience the mother clear light? What do you think, Mark? Yep, this Mark. Now, there's sometimes another Mark, not always. Oh, bless you. You're gonna go. Why? So I asked, is there an experience of the mother clear light during sleep, right? Is that what I said? Yeah. And you said no. You're going to go with no. Why? Isn't there a natural, without the need of meditation, isn't there a natural development of the clear light, subtle clear light mind? So? I said at the mother, what we call the mother clear light, is there an experience of the mother clear light during the sleep process? Because there is an experience of the clear light, right? What do you think, Venerable? Pardon? There's not an experience of the clear light? Not the mother clear light, but there is experience of clear light. So there's many, and why is it not called the mother clear light? What do you think, Eric? Why is that not the, if we accepted Mark's premise, why is that not the mother clear light? When does the mother clear light take place? When you die. So when, you're stopping to breathe, the mother clear light occurs, or when? It's the very end of the dying process, right? It's the actual death, definition of the actual death state, where all of the errors absorb to the heart chakra irreversibly due to karma. So at time of sleep, not all the errors absorb, for one thing, and they are reversible. So that's not the mother clear light, although a yogi or yogini could use it, recognize the dissolution of the elements if they had already previously recognized them in meditation, had induced them in the completion stage. It's possible to recognize that, dissolution of the elements and the arisal of this clear light mind at sleep, and utilize that to meditate on emptiness. That's one of the ways the yogis, the profound ways they use the sleep. Okay, that's good. So at what other times does the clear light mind arise during our lifetime? We just said it arises at the time of sleep, if you sleep long enough. I mean, maybe as you go to sleep, you might start to go to sleep. Maybe you didn't actually go all the way to sleep. When else does it occur during life? Anyone know? Pardon? Other than meditation, let's say. And is it easy to do that? Have you actualized the clear light in meditation? I'm not asking you to brag, but just be honest.
Well, I wish to discuss that.
Oh. Well, there would be very high realization. You may have, if you're a very highly realized being, but usually it's only the clear light in meditation only dawns due to the power of meditation in the completion stage. And if we're in the completion stage, that means we've already finished the generation stage, if we're doing this with any kind of control, which means that we can concentrate for, 8 hours longer on some incredibly small point within our body with incredible detail. So unless you can do that, probably we haven't. And I'm not saying you can't. You might have. But probably, other than sleep and yogis and yoginis who might generate it, when else? Durji, when else clear light arise, do you know? Come on, take a guess. Take a stab. You know. It's said that the clear lights, is it good? Maybe it could. It depends on how, if you've been knocked unconscious or something. I always go like this. It could be this way. If you faint, if you sneeze, maybe there's some dissolution of the elements. I noticed my teacher Lama Sopa Rinpoche, when he makes divination, sometimes he yawns. It's sometimes that can help to induce. Do you know? What is a yawn? That can help to induce the airs to enter. And of course, that has to be aided by your meditation, but also during the sexual act. At the time of orgasm, it's possible that the airs enter into the central channel. And if you can aid that somehow, that can be utilized to meditate on the clear light. That would be, for instance, like in Highest Yoga Tantra, that would be one of the aims, to be not to just to have ordinary sexual encounter, but to be able to transform that somehow. Yeah.
For the sun clear light, if you're defining it, does it just mean the yogi and completion stage reaching the subtlest mind, or is it specifically using that mind then to meditate on emptiness? Is that part of the sun clear light?
What do you think? What's your understanding? If a yogi or yogini in the completion stage was able to induce that subtlemost mind, is that called a sun clear light? Or like if we said, is that a fully qualified sun clear light?
Well, my understanding is that it's not fully qualified if they're not using it to meditate on emptiness.
Do we have a definition of the sun clear light here?
Page 47.
What does it say?
Down at the bottom. There's some, on the answer, although mother's sun clear light studies.
Oh, no, that's, yeah, but didn't it talk about the sun clear light before that?
I think that's it.
Really?
Well, that whole section from about the middle page down and then on the next page.
Okay. So we have to go back. So in Jeffrey Hopkins' preface here. No, it doesn't talk about it here. Well, what it's saying here, rather than searching right now, it's see if someone can find another place. At the bottom of page 47, it says, is the clear light of death in general a fully qualified clear light? That's not your question, but in answer to that, it says, although the mother and sun clear lights that are mixed and stabilized within the view of emptiness by a yogi are fully qualified clear light. This is the clear light of death. The clear light of death that dawns for ordinary beings, not by the power of meditation, but by its own accord, is a case of imputing the name clear light to just the stoppage of gross dualistic appearances. So the clear light, like the clear light of death, that's merely called that, that's not the actual fully qualified clear light that's meditating on emptiness, subjective clear light meditating on emptiness. So when there's this stoppage, same way in meditation, when there's a stoppage of the dualistic appearances, and there's just the dawning of a vacuity to the mind, and this very, very subtle subjective clear light mind, that's not the, as I understand, that's not the sun clear light. The sun clear light is something that you're going to try to mix with the mother clear light, and the sun clear light is already, has to have been cultivated in the lifetime in meditation, realizing emptiness. It has to be a subjective mind, a wisdom consciousness, to my understanding, that realizes emptiness. And so that when mixing that at the time of death, that would be a fully qualified clear light. At, you know, when it says here, although the mother and sun clear lights that are mixed and stabilized within the view of emptiness by a yogi are fully qualified clear light. So that's at the clear light of death. When we talk about the real clear light, the mother clear light, the actual clear light, is that subjective clear light mind at the time of death, where all the errors have absorbed, which by the power of mixing it with that previous recollection, that previous experience of emptiness, the sun clear light with the subtlemost mind, is able to recognize this vacuity as emptiness. That's my understanding. Okay. Leo.
In the Kala Chakra system, when you're meditating, when you're going through this meditation, and you're transforming birth, death, the bardo, and rebirth into 3 bodies of the Buddha, you start off in the first dissolution with the appearance of smoke, and not with the appearance of a mirage.
Yeah.
And that completely threw me. It would seem like it would be an exercise in confusion to train yourself in one way to actually experience the other. When you die, you know.
So I'm not sure. I think we asked Kirti Sanchar Rinpoche because he taught about the Kala Chakra Tantra this last summer, but I'm not certain what actually takes place in the course of an ordinary death, according to the general system of Tantra, which is based on the Guhya Samaja, where we get the Yamantaka and Heruka and all of these other general tantras, all based in the same way. They say that in a natural process of death, naturally the earth element absorbs first, and we have this mirage-like vision. So in the Kala Chakra, there's a different explanation of that. But this text itself doesn't even go into that, at least up till now. And I think that's something for you to investigate. Maybe you can go back over those sections when Rinpoche taught this last summer and see if you can discern. Is there something there in that text?
Yeah,
What was it saying?
here, and I was actually reading about it, but I'm trying to find it, and I can't now.
Okay.
And it does delineate the differences between.
We want you to see if you can find while we're finishing, if you don't mind. Yeah, of course.
When was this written, the original text?
1939. No, I'm joking. Aki Yonsen, when was Aki Yonsen living? Dorji, do you know? You okay? You still have a cold. You're a little bit under the weather. That's when this book, maybe that's when this book was published. Yeah. That's when this text was published. So if you look at the very back, is that what you're looking at? Yeah, I can check for you. I can't remember. Here it says 18th century. So 18th century means what? 1700s. So if you're interested in such things, I think you can find on the web in the Tibetan Resource Center. What's it called? Tibetan Resource Information Center, is that what it's called? Or TRC? TBRC, Gene Smith's center. If you look under Akyu Yongsen, if you put in the name correctly, you can find out, according to the colophones, what his birthdays and death dates are. And it possibly even gives the dates. Here it's perhaps in the text that was used, it might not have said when it was written. Sometimes in the colophones of these texts, in this text, let's see, is there a colophon at the end? This was collected from the speech of the excellent by the lazy Yangchen Gawe Lodro, which is his one of his ordained names, also called Akyu Yongsen, and it was written down as a reminder for himself. So sometimes it says this was written in the so-and-so year, the fire ox year or something like that, and you can then determine what year that was in the Western calendar. And there's some other indications, but they weren't so concerned about that.
The reason that I asked was that I cannot find the phrase anymore. I thought I read it in this book, but I may have read it in another book on death. A reference to a creature that lives inside of iron.
Lives inside of what?
Iron.
And
Iron.
wood.
But in iron, I thought that was pretty remarkable because there really is a bacteria that, in fact, lives inside of iron.
So you're saying he's getting it wrong. It says something that lives in wood, or there's something else? Both. Okay. Okay, let's leave that for a second. I just want to, before our break, last time we had gotten up to 55, page 55 or page 56?
56.
56, we talked about the actions of immediate retribution. And do you know what, Venerable Choki, do you know what the actions of immediate retribution are? I mean, have you ever heard that term before? There's sometimes in earlier days we called them the 5 heinous crimes. Okay, so actually, the actual translation doesn't mean heinous. There was just some attempt, because sometimes at earlier times when people aren't able to discern what the meaning of all these words are, and they get an explanation, they just use a general term like that. But what they're called are the actions of immediate retribution, or you could say. It means like this, that without any other rebirth coming between you and the hells, you'll be born in hell immediately after this lifetime. But it does not mean, as we see in our text here, that you don't go through the bardo. Anytime you're born in the desire realm, hell is in the desire realm, or the form realm, or the formless realm? Don, what do you think? This is desire realm? It's a desire realm experience. So if you're born in the desire or form realms, you necessarily have to pass through the bardo. Is that true? What about spontaneous rebirth, like Padmasambhava or Aryadeva? They have to have a bardo? What about the Buddha? Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. So we talked about that last time. So we said, did we finish that? However,
We stopped it. Stopped it where it says the 5 actions.
the 5 actions of immediate retribution: killing one's father. That's one action. Usually it mentions mother first. Killing one's mother, one's father, and arhat, here translated as foe destroyer. Causing blood to flow from the Buddha, the body of the Buddha, with evil intent. In other words, if you're shaving his head, as a favor, and you accidentally cut him, that's not one of the actions of immediate retribution. Otherwise, it'd be very dangerous to do any kind of actions for your guru, I think I did that once with one of my shaving his. Actually, he wanted just, there was one teacher in England, he wanted his hair just cut a little bit, and I did too much. It looked very, he said, cut it all off, then take it all off. So causing blood to flow from the body of a Buddha with evil intent, causing dissension in the spiritual community. What is that called? Schism in the Sangha. It doesn't mean the spiritual community in general. It means the Sangha at the time of the Buddha. These lead to immediate rebirth in hell upon death. Nevertheless, the dying being must first pass through the intermediate state for a brief period. Therefore, immediate should not be interpreted to preclude the intermediate state. Okay? Immediate does not preclude intermediate. Nice. Our slogan. Okay. However, there is no intermediate state for rebirth in the formless realm. There are 4 formless absorptions that constitute the formless realm. Limitless space. Say if one has achieved the 4th form absorption, one might meditate on there is nothing but space. This is just what's called a mundane Vipassana, mundane special insight. And as a result of that, one can actually have an experience in meditation of limitless space. There is nothing but, seemingly nothing but space. And as a result of that, you leave an immovable karma. You create some immovable karma. Remember when we talked about meritorious, non-meritorious, and immovable karma in Lanrim? You create an immovable karma to be born in this state after some lifetime. You create a throwing karma to be born in the formless realm. Therefore, so limitless space, then later limitless consciousness, thinking even there's no space, there's just consciousness, a subtler state, and then nothingness, there is nothing, thinking like that, and then the peak of cyclic existence, which sometimes says without discrimination. It literally says, but not without discrimination. But what it means is without gross discrimination, without gross discrimination, but not without subtle discrimination. There's still some discrimination in that state. That's the peak of cyclic existence. So if you're going to be born in these, there is no bardo state, there's no intermediate state. This is because the aggregates, which are the basis of a name of a formless being, that is the being's mind and mental factors. Remember when we say name and form? Name refers to the four aggregates other than the form aggregate. Do you remember that? Name. Yeah? So the name, which is the basis, that is the being's mind and mental factors, are achieved in just the place of death. So the formless realm has no particular place. A person who is to be reborn in a formless realm actualizes a formless meditative stabilization from within the clear light of death. So there's no reverse order black near attainment if they're going to be born into, say, limitless space or limitless consciousness. From that clear light of death, you manifest that meditative stabilization. There is no dawning of the mind of near attainment, black near attainment, upon rising from the clear light of death in the reverse process, because such would be a mind of the intermediate state. Thus, the formless realm has no place separate from the desire and form realms. Let's take a break. Yes.
Is that going to be over 2 days?
It's like always asking the dates and the exam. What about it? Yeah, I know. No, it's good. It's very good. What's your question?
I'm just wondering if we will have some time to do a final, or do we need to start swatting now?
We won't have a long time to swat, but hopefully most of you are coming to all the classes and you're keeping up to date, and you can swat. There won't be a long time. It'll be maybe 2 days, or if we have the last class on Monday, maybe the exam will be on the Thursday. Okay. So that's not a long time to swat, or whatever that word was. Is slug, swear. Done.
Just what we ended up with, this last sentence in the top paragraph for 57.
Thus the
Thus,
formless realm has no
place
place.
separate from the desire and form. Explain that to me.
So sometimes when we talk about the different realms, it almost sounds like they're above us, I'm not quite sure. The form realm, because it is, the beings in the form realm have a gross physical form, they may have a particular location. But the formless realm, even though the mind, if you talk about from the point of view of Tantra, there's subtle wind, but the formless realm can take place anywhere. There's no kind of interaction with other beings. In the form realm, there are other beings in the form realm with you. So there's some kind of location. The formless realm, I think you're there alone. Might be a bit lonely. Okay?
Something about if you meditate and achieve a concentration of formless type, that you then create some karma that might cause you to be thrown into the formless realm. Like, is that a good thing? I mean, or is that something we want to avoid? Is being born in the formless realm a positive thing for our?
Well, it depends. It's not so much that you might be born in the formless realm. If you attain the preparation, the actual preparation to one of the, say, the form realms or the formless realms, or say there are 4 form absorptions, 4 formless absorptions. If you obtain the actual, the preparation to one of those states in meditation, using what we call mundane vipassana. Remember, there's 2 kinds of penetrative insight. Do you know the word vipassana? What is it in Tibetan? Do you know? Lakton, right? So if Vipassana, you've heard like Vipassana courses and so forth. Vipassana from the point of view of Tantra, from the point of view of Sutra, is a state that is attained after you have achieved single-pointed concentration. After you've achieved tranquil abiding, shamatha, and on the basis of that calm state of mind, you have the ability to analyze within it without now again causing discursive thoughts to rise. Simply having shamatha, you're only concentrating on one thing, say an image of the Buddha or the clear light nature of your mind or something like this. But if you try to analyze then within that concentrated state, it then can cause the mind to become disturbed and you lose your ability to stabilize. So you have to learn then within that how to analyze. The analogy sometimes is a pool, what do you say, a quiet pool of water that all the ripples have been, there's no wind to cause the ripples, all the dirt and dust has settled. It's like shamatha, like the tranquil mind. Then if you take a fish, little minnow, or what do you call it, goldfish or something, and you put it in that, the fish of analysis. At first, the analysis in it might cause ripples and cause some of the mud to come up from the bottom, cause the mind to become disturbed and the afflictions or discursive thoughts to rise again. So you have to learn then how to glide through that tranquil abiding. And there's a process that's mentioned in the Lan Rim and all of the sutra teachings and so forth, how one achieves that state of actual vipassana. So there are two ways of developing vipassana, what's called mundane vipassana and supramundane vipassana. Mundane vipassana takes the form realm, first of all, takes the desire realm, that we are in, as inferior and meditates on the virtues of the first form absorption. How wonderful that is. Longer life, less problems, less suffering, better qualities. It's like someone trying to convince you to live in the suburbs in their housing development, or something like that. So one analyzes in this way, and one develops not a cessation of attachment to the desire realm, but a separation from attachment. It's almost like a cessation. You still have the seed of attachment to the desire realm, but in meditation, your mind becomes elevated, more sophisticated, more subtle, and you can attain the first absorption. Okay? Even the preparation, even if you achieve the preparations for the first absorption, you create a throwing karma then, that way, actual throwing karma now, not just, like you said, maybe you'll be born there. You create a karma to be born in the first absorption, the first form realm, at some time, not immediately because you're still alive. But you can enter back into that mind even with the form aggregate of the desire realm, but your mind can actually be then a form realm mind. In the Abhidharma, there's much discussion about this. Then you can achieve the second concentration, the third concentration, the fourth concentration, and play all sorts of games up there. The Bodhisattvas necessarily do that in order to develop clairvoyance and to strengthen their mind. The other possibility is even without achieving the first concentration, just the preparation of the first concentration, one can use that to meditate on emptiness. It's called Supramundane Vipassana. And that preparation to the first concentration is actually called the not unable. Is it like a double negative, right? Not unable. Some people would just say, oh, the able one is actually the not unable. It is able to meditate on emptiness, and it is suitable to actually achieve the Arya state on that without ever achieving any of the clairvoyances that are dependent on the actual first concentration and so forth. So there, in some of the texts, they talk about, and when we talk about the 20 kinds of Arya beings, the 20 Sangha. Usually we talk about 4 kinds of Aryas. Do you know what they are? Do you know, Michelle? Germans, Norwegians, Finnish. No, I'm joking. You know the 4 Aryas? Stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and Arhat. So those are all Aryas according to the upper schools. A stream enterer is someone who's on the, who's achieved the path of seeing. So when there's a longer enumeration of those in the Hinayana teachings, they talk about the 20 Sangha. Why should they use the word Sangha? Because Arya beings are actual Sangha, right? It doesn't mean 20 kinds of monks or nuns. It means the 20 kinds of Arya beings, a little more elaborated. And so some of them, of those 20, some of them are ones who never achieved the first concentration, but are able to achieve liberation, this in the Hinayana path, merely on the basis of the preparation of the first concentration. So there are advantages to developing them. The bodhisattvas necessarily develop clairvoyance, even on the path of preparation, way before the path of seeing. I've heard some people saying, it's possible, when you have the path of seeing, you first have clairvoyance. From Mahayana point of view and the Hinayana point of view, a bodhisattva necessarily has clairvoyance way before the path of before the path of seeing, on the path of preparation. For a long period of time, they actually develop the mundane Vipassana and the various concentrations in order to develop clairvoyance and things, to know others' minds, to help them, to manifest various kinds of bodies and so forth. So there are reasons for doing that, but there's no need to in order to realize emptiness. There's some arhats who, even without achieving these dhyanas, or remember what we talked about before, jhanas. In Pali they call jhana. And Sanskrit it's dhyana. So even without achieving them, it's possible to realize emptiness, to develop supramundane Vipassana. That's the one that we would cherish most. But Atisha said that if you really want to be able to help sentient beings, you need to have clairvoyance. Once you've, in the process of trying to develop bodhicitta, and, at the same time, you're trying at some level, even though you don't have pure bodhicitta, pure compassion, you're trying to help others. So single point of concentration and these kinds of meditative states are something that help you to develop bodhicitta, because the mind is very stable when you meditate on bodhicitta, and they can help you to accumulate merit, especially in Tantra, having these various kinds of feats, these siddhis. What's the difference between a siddhi and a siddha? Darshan? Right. A siddha is like a mahasiddha. We don't talk about the 80. How many mahasiddhas were there? 84. We don't talk about the 84 mahasiddhis. We talk about the mahasiddhas. A siddhi or siddhi is a feat. In Tibetan we say ngudrup, some special actual attainment. Okay. So now there's a discussion here. It says special intermediate being is on page 57. Vasubandhu's commentary on the treasury of knowledge, that means his auto-commentary to the Abhidharmakosha, because he wrote the root verses, the Abhidharmakosha Karika, and then he wrote his own commentary to that. You remember the situation, pardon? Vasubandhu. Basham is the commentary, yeah. So when he wrote, first he wrote the Karikas, and the Vaibhashikas saw this and they said, fantastic, he's our man. He explained our system perfectly. And then when they read the Bhasham, they saw that he was actually writing it from the point of view of whom? Do you remember, Diana? Your face up. She was in the first concentration, I think. He wrote from the point of view of the Sautrantikas and kind of tickling the ribs of the Vaibhashikas. So the Bhasham is, sort of criticizes some of the Vaibhashika views. So here in this commentary, and in a text by Naga Bodhi about Tantra, the order stages of the means of achieving Guhya Samaja, these two texts say that the special intermediate being, who is a bodhisattva just one rebirth from enlightenment, leaves the joyous land. Where's the joyous land? Is it New York City, Los Angeles? Where is that? Pure Land? Which Pure Land? Is it one that we don't hear about very much? It's what we call Tushita. They just translated it here. So if you've heard of Tushita, because the bodhisattva who is going to show enlightenment, become a universal teacher, because many Buddhists, there are many ways to achieve enlightenment, not necessarily in Tushita heaven, descending from Tushita heaven, but when the Buddhas, the 1,000 Buddhas of this era who appear as universal teachers, they all descend from Tushita and pass on the regency to the next bodhisattva who will become the next Buddha after them. It's one of the 12 deeds. We got it? Did you catch her question? Do you have to realize emptiness to go to the Pure Lands? Venerable Sophia, do you know? To go to the Pure Land, does one have to realize emptiness? Not necessary? What do you think? Why not?
Like Amitabha Pure Land, at least in a Chinese Buddhist view, because there's different level, but to some there's different level.
Was it called the Western Paradise? The Eastern Paradise? What is the Amitabha's Pure Land?
Sukhavati.
What is it? Sukhavati? So is that the Eastern Paradise or the Western Paradise? Western Paradise. So there's different Pure Lands of Amitabha. If it's a Pure Land of the Sambhogakaya aspect, there's Sambhogakaya Pure Lands. To go to those, to be born in those, what has to happen? You have to be an Arya Bodhisattva, not just an Arya. You have to be a Bodhisattva who's realized emptiness directly. But to be born in a Pure Land, you don't have to necessarily have realized emptiness. In fact, you can develop renunciation there, let alone, and then bodhicitta there, and realize emptiness there, but it might take a long time. So remember, we've talked about this before in other courses. Bodhisattvas who have a real intention to try to achieve enlightenment quickly, they might go to a Pure Land, like Tushita or some other Pure Land for a short time, as kind of like a vacation. Like after you've done, your 6 years as director or whatever of, spiritual coordinator at Vajrapani, then you have a 6-month break or something like that. But you don't stay there forever. You come back and then you spiritual coordinator somewhere else, or you teach or something like that, right? So, but 12-day course. Why? Because it's easier to develop bodhicitta and renunciation in the southern continent, because it's so obvious, the suffering of sentient beings. In the Pure Land, there's no overt suffering. You only can, with clairvoyance, maybe see it, know of it once you've developed clairvoyance, and it can be taught about. There's definite progress, but it might be very, very slow compared to the kind of progress you could make in the southern continent. So So that kind of indicates you would not even necessarily have renunciation to be born in the Pure Land, but you have to have the karma, you have to have some karma to be born there. It's not, from our teachers' teachings, His Holiness' teachings and others, it's not sufficient just to recite some mantra or to say some prayers, although they can become causes to be born there. But just having the cause of something is not sufficient. You have to also have all the cooperative conditions. So when the Buddha said reciting this mantra or saying this prayer creates the karma to be born in the Pure Land, he was infallible in that regard, but that doesn't mean that you'll be born in the Pure Land immediately. You have to create other kinds of karma. One of the main kinds of karma to be born in the Pure Land is what? Do you know? Pardon? Merit? Merit, maybe, merit. But pure view. So not to have pure view now, not to discriminate between better and worse and friend and enemy and so forth, to try to have pure view creates one of the most important karmic conditions to be born in the Pure Land. There's a story His Holiness used to tell, and I think Kapche Trijang Rinpoche and his disciples used to tell of, maybe it's in the Lan Rim also, of one of the first, most recent maybe, Dharma king of Shambhala. What are they called? What are the Dharma kings of Shambhala called? Karikas? Kulikas. Not Karikas, Kulikas. So I think it was there was one Lama, great Lama, who wanted very much to help sentient beings to be born as this king. And he had very pure view. He especially practiced pure view in his lifetime. And then one of the Panchen Lamas, who is very associated, the Panchen Lamas are very associated with Kala Chakra and Shambhala. One of the Panchen Lamas said, this Lama, his wish will be fulfilled, that when he passes away, he'll be born as this Kulika. So, okay, so let's leave it there. Pure Lands. So, special intermediate being. Vasubandhu's commentary on Abhidharma Kosha, Nagabodhi's ordered stages of the means of achieving Guhya Samaja say that a special intermediate being who is a bodhisattva, just one rebirth from enlightenment, leaves the joyous land, leaves Tushita, heaven, having given his, made Maitreya the, let's say, in this case of Shakyamuni, the regent and so forth, and enters into the womb of the mother's womb, and that such an intermediate being is a youth adorned with the major and minor marks, with light illuminating 1 billion sets of 4 continents. So 1 billion here means, when we talk about it, usually in the text it says tong sum, it means 1,000 cubed. When the Buddhas manifest in our world system, a universal teacher manifests within 1,000 sets of world systems like our world, and then 1,000 of those, that makes 1 million, then 1,000 of those is called the great 3,000 world systems, billion world systems. Each world system has a Mount Meru at its center, 4 major continents and 8 minor continents. Then there's an objection. This contradicts Bhadanta Dharma Subhuti's explanation that Shakyamuni Buddha entered the womb in the form of a 6-tusked white elephant. Does that make sense? 6th? Do you ever hear that before? Don't you ever heard that before? Is that just some fantasy fairy tale or what? 6. She. The proverbial she. Mahamaya? Okay. Is that her name? Maya Devi? Mahamaya Devi. So she had a dream that a white elephant with 6 tusks came in. But the Buddha, that was just her dream? Here the text is a little bit unclear. It says, it seems to me to be unclear. It says, objection. This contradicts Bhadanta Dharma Subhuti's explanation that the Buddha entered the womb in the form of a 6-tusked white elephant. Answer. There is no need to assert the process in accordance with the explanation, with that explanation. And then in parentheses, Jeffrey Hopkins says, which is his own fabrication. I'm not sure that means that's actually what's meant here. However, it can be said that he taught such, or such is taught, merely in accordance with the mother's dream. You know, that the Buddha came in this form. If it were asserted that an intermediate being who was to be reborn as a human has the aspect of an animal, it would contradict many valid treatises. Right? Remember when we talked about the intermediate state? If you're going to be born as a human, what form will you have in the intermediate state? You'll have a shape of a human, of, you know, small, childlike human. So it says, Shakyamuni's entry into the womb is asserted to be literal in the Hinayana system, but is merely a display in the Mahayana, because he had earlier attained Buddhahood. So here's a little bit confusion, because in the famous sutra called the Lailita Vestara, do you know the Lailita Vestara? Nampa Rolpe. Was it Nampa Rolpe? I can't remember the Tibetan. Lailita means what? Do you know what Lailita means? This you can find in the Dharma. It's called Dharma Publishing, I think. Very nice edition in 2 volumes. Dharma Publishing. The Voice of the Buddha, it's called. This is the Lailita Vestara Sutra. So this is the sutra where the Buddha explains his descent from Tushita and his play, Lailita, or display. Rolpa in Tibetan, or Lailita, means, in one hand it means play or sport. On the other hand, it also means display. You know, like, so this was just the Buddha had already attained enlightenment many eons before, manifesting in Tushita as the regent when the last Buddha descended to earth and went through these 12 deeds. Does the Buddha have to go through the intermediate state? What do you think? Why not?
Emptiness, the clear light nature.
He's already enlightened.
He's already enlightened. So once
He's very enlightened. He couldn't be any more enlightened.
no.
He's enlightened.
So once he dissolves into the clear light, he is clear light. He is.
Well, one could
that.
say that to enter into the intermediate state, you have to have the reverse order from the clear light into the black near attainment. At this point, Buddha has already purified all of those minds. There's no longer a rising of a black near attainment, a red increase in white appearance, and so forth. So the Buddha. So this is why I think I'm not quite sure what the point is, because certainly the author. I'm not sure. This is talking from the common view. From the Hinayana point of view, the Bodhisattva in Tushita is not yet enlightened, right? Do you know what I'm saying? Michelle, you know, like when Maitreya Buddha, who's now in Tushita heaven, when he descends to earth in the future and leaves the regency in the hands of the next future Buddha after him, from the Hinayana point of view, he is not yet, or nor was Shakyamuni when he was descended, is not yet a Buddha. Why not? They're a bodhisattva. On the 10th, are they in the 10th bhumi, according to Hinayana? Do you know? Anyone know? From the Hinayana point of view. No, they're not even on the 10th bhumi, because they're a bodhisattva who has the karma to be a universal teacher. They have to go through the intermediate state from the Hinayana point of view, or from some of the Hinayana, because some Hinayana does not accept the bardo, right? They enter into the mother's womb, and they wouldn't, from that point of view, that they wouldn't enter in the form of a six-tusked elephant from that point of view. And then sitting under the Bodhi tree after one of the deeds of the Buddha, what point are they? Are they on the 10th bhumi there? No, remember from tenets, they're only on the path of preparation, because they achieve the path of seeing and the path of no more learning in that one cushion under the Bodhi tree. So for them, the Bodhisattva in Tushita heaven is not a Buddha, not just manifesting as a Bodhisattva, is a Bodhisattva who's not even on the path of seeing yet, not even an Arya. And they achieve enlightenment that lifetime. But from the Mahayana, the Buddha achieved enlightenment many kalpas, many eons before that. So let me read you something here from the Lailita Vestara. And I probably put the mark in the wrong place. So it's talking about, there's many episodes here at the beginning talking about, this is the first volume, about the Bodhisattva sort of investigating with the rest of the Bodhisattvas into Tushita heaven where he should be reborn. And there's all these debates. They say, oh, you should be born to this family, that's the best one. And Buddha knows where he's going to be born, but there's sort of this discussion going on to determine what's the best body, the best family to be reborn in. In this manner, O monks, did the Bodhisattva consecrate. This is when he gave the crown to Maitreya. In this manner, O monks, did the Bodhisattva consecrate the Bodhisattva Maitreya into Tushita heaven, the joyous land. He then addressed himself again to the great assembly of gods, because they're all gods of the which realm? Form realm or formless realm, Tushita? Do you know? It's desire realm, right? It's not a formless realm. It's not a form realm. It's one of the desire realms. It's in the desire realm. So he addressed himself to the great assembly of gods. Companions, in what form shall I enter the womb of the mother? Because he's asking, he knows already. He's just, he's acting like, what should I do? It's like the Dalai Lama asking, how should we do this? And, some said, in human form. Others said, in the form of Chakra. Who is Chakra? One of the gods, right? And others said, in the form of Brahma. Still others replied, in the form of a great king. In the form of Vaisravana. Who's Vaisravana? Pardon? Vaisravana? No, not Yamantaka. Vaisravana is one of the gods of the four directions, the directional kings. Sometimes we say the god of wealth, right? Another says, in the form of Rahu. Another says, as a Gandharva, a Kinara. Remember Kinara? I told you before? Mianchi. Is that a human or what? I'm not quite sure. Remember? Kinara. A Mahoraga. I don't know what that is. Or as Mahashvara. So they get all these suggestions. In the form of Chandra or Surya, the moon or the sun. In the form of a Garuda, someone says. So then Ugratejas spoke. One of the Devaputras of the Brahma realm, a Rishi in a previous life. Do you know what a Rishi is? Like a Maharishi? George, do you know what a Rishi is?
Like a sage?
Yeah, I should say a, quote, Rishi, not a Rishi. It's not one word, a Rishi, right? Like Maharishi. A person who is called Rishi is someone who's a saint who's one of the etymologies in Tibetan is, the Tibetan word, the way they translate is drangsong, someone who's become straight. If they make a prediction, you can count on it being true. So they have psychic powers and so forth. So this one Devaputra of the Brahma realm, who had been a Rishi in his previous life, who in this rebirth, who had attained the enlightened irreversible state. What does that mean? He's already enlightened? No, it means he's irreversible to attain enlightenment. He said, since all this information is found in the Brahman books, in mantras, Vedas, and Shastras, we know the Bodhisattva must enter the womb of his mother in the magnificent form of a great elephant with 6 tusks, covered with a golden netting. sort of like ornamentation on it, right? His head is a rosy red and his temples moist, his body beautiful and gracious. So 6 tusks. A Brahmin who knows the meaning of the Vedas and Shastras will predict that one entering the womb in this form will be endowed with the 32 signs of a great being. O monks, while the Bodhisattva was still residing in the realm of Tushita, he examined the time of his birth and caused 8 signs to manifest in the pure abode of King Suddhodana. And then he gives the various signs, of auspiciousness and so forth that were taking place. Then in the next chapter, so he gives his last discourse in Tushita heaven, and he enters into the mother's womb in the form of this elephant, it said, with 6 tusks. So this is an emanation. So it says, this is the next chapter, Descent into the Womb. Through her right side he entered in the form of a small white elephant with 6 tusks, his head the color of cochineal. Cochineal? I don't know what that is. His tusks of gold, his limbs and organs all without imperfection. So according to the Mahayana Sutras, he does enter into the womb of the mother as an elephant, but that doesn't mean he was entering into that form from the bardo, from the intermediate state. That's the main point. So then finally, conclusion. As will be explained in the chapter 4, these factors of the intermediate state, the bardo, are brought within the path of the practice of taking intermediate state as the enjoyment body in the stage of generation of highest yoga mantra. That means in highest yoga tantra, the generation stage. They are also the bases of purification, that which is to be purified, by means of the impure and pure illusory bodies in the stage of completion. Therefore, it is important to know them in detail. So these factors, these various ways that the intermediate state being arises and appears and so forth, they are the bases of purification by means of the impure and pure illusory bodies in the completion stage. So the impure illusory body arises in meditation, could arise in the intermediate state also. In analogy, this is purifying this impure bardo state. That's the impure bardo is what's being purified. The actual purifier is the impure and pure illusory bodies. What was the actual purifier of the actual death? Do you remember? Wasn't it the example and meaning clear light? Do you remember? So look at the conclusion of the last chapter. Conclusion. This is on page 48. As we'll be explaining chapter 4, these stages of death are brought within the path of practice of taking death as the truth body, the Dharmakaya, in the stages of generation, the generation stage, and completion stage of highest yoga mantra. They are also the main bases of purification. These factors are that which is to be purified by means of the metaphoric or example and actual meaning clear light. Therefore, it is very important to form a good understanding of them. So the similar kind of conclusion here about the bardo state. These are the things that will be purified into the Sambhogakaya. Okay? So let's just begin the next section here, taking birth, on page 58. The Sutra of Teaching to Nanda on entry to the womb, one of the sutras, says that in order for an intermediate being to take rebirth in a mother's womb, 3 favorable conditions must aggregate, must come together, and 3 unfavorable ones must be absent. In general, what would we say for a baby to be born or a baby to be conceived? What factors from Western scientific point of view would we say have to be present? and what have to be absent? Well, mother and father have to engage in intercourse generally, right? We're talking about birth in the womb. Yeah, well, I'm saying here, in order for an intermediate state being to take rebirth in a mother's womb. Okay, okay. But in general, let's say in the 30, when your mother and father were growing up, I say, you know, if they're explaining the birds and the bees to you, okay, do you know the birds and the bees? You don't need to have explained them. I'm not gonna get into that. So there have to be, the mother and father would have to be engaging in intercourse. So there would have to be the chance that the male seed from the semen, the sperm, would enter and fertilize the female egg. Okay, so first of all, there has to be intercourse in general. As you say now, there can be in a fertilization even into the mother's womb, or do they do it outside in a petri dish first and then put it in the mother's womb? I think, right? They fertilize. I'm not sure if they can do directly. They can also artificially inseminate, but first of all, you have to have a sperm fertilizing an egg within the mother, eventually within the mother's body, whether it's first outside or not. Another factor that would have to be present is that the father's sperm and the mother's egg would have to be fertile. For instance, there are many people today who have the problems of infertility. They're not able to have children because either one or the other partner's, either egg or sperm, doesn't have the potency to give birth, genetically speaking, right? And then the mother's womb would have to be free of certain kinds of imperfections. I don't know what doctors would say. They might say that the mother wouldn't have the capacity to give birth because there's some defect in the womb. General. Okay, so let's see what, from the Buddhist point of view, in this sutra, what it said. The mother must be free from disease and at a time of non-menstruation. So why does that have to be true? I mean, you know, I'm going to tell you. Birds and the bees, right? Dorji, do you know? Huh? You're the youngest person here, I think. I guess. No. What if it was time of menstruation? Menstruation is a time when the menses, the blood from the mother's body flushes out things from where the egg and sperm might have been deposited, right? I'm not sure the name of all of the organs. So in general, what was it in the Catholic Church at one point, some decades ago? All our Catholics are here. What was it? They would be against artificial, or what would they call it? Contraception. What do they call it? Artificial contraception or contraception? Contraception. But they would allow, in certain cases, the rhythm method. What would that entail? Do you remember, Leo?
Well, basically.
On a
calendar basis.
But one would be able to have sex with some chance of not causing pregnancy if it was close to a time of menstruation or when the egg was not present. So this is kind of what's being inferred here, right? You can
stay away when she's ovulating, basically.
Stay away when she's ovulating. Okay, so there's different ways to know that. The mother must be free from disease and at a time of non-menstruation. The smell eater, remember that was one of the synonyms of the bardo being, must be nearby and must have a wish to enter into this union, to enter into this fertilized egg. So that's something we don't talk about in the West, that there has to be a mind stream in the intermediate state. Okay? It's not just enough that there's a fertilized egg from a Buddhist point of view. There has to be a bardo being nearby that has the wish to enter. The male and female must desire each other and meet. That means I believe that means they have to be having intercourse, so there has to be the chance for the entry of the sperm and the meeting of the sperm and the egg. For the mother's womb must be free from the fault this is something you may not, I'm not sure, medical science would say this here. This must be free of the fault of its center being like the shape of a barley seed. Any doctors here? Oh yes, the barley seed fault. It must be free of the fault of its shape of its center being an ant's waist. You know how the ant's waist is? It's sort of pinched in. Or a camel's mouth. I'm not sure what fault that refers to. Maybe I wish we had. Do we have anyone here? You're not a midwife or a doctor or anything? Sometimes we've had doctors and nurses at other courses. And must not be obstructed by wind, bile, or phlegm. So there could be faults of the mother's womb, so that would not make it suitable to. Maybe these intrauterine devices create some kind of fault like that. Because does this talk about, I'm not sure, because this says for an intermediate being to take rebirth, usually the intrauterine devices they allow what we would call rebirth, but then they cause the fertilized egg to be ejected afterwards, right? Or do they cause the egg not to adhere to the wall or whatever? Okay, so they might cause some kind of obstruction artificially that might be similar to things that would have taken place naturally in a woman's womb. 5, both the mother and father must not have faulty seed in the sense of either the semen or blood. They always refer to the egg as blood, not descending. In other words, there has to be the actual emanation of these. Or of the one descending before the other, or though they descend together, either of them being rotten. Usually we wouldn't, what would the term we would use? Sterile, or is that the word we use? Infertile. Rotten sounds like, I don't know. It's been there a long time, I don't know. Well, yeah. In the case of eggs, women have, from Western science, women have at birth a certain number of eggs that eventually exhaust, right? At a very old age, would they, in essence, become incapable of, even if there were some eggs left in an 80-year-old woman or a 90-year-old woman, would they, maybe that's kind of the sense.
And the children that are born with a lot of defects, like the mongoloids, are children born from what is called like a lazy egg, an old egg that's kind of, just been there, but it's not a very potent egg, but it's strong enough to make a baby, but it doesn't have a lot of...
There's a lot of chance of defects. So,
yes.
So in the extreme case of it being even more infertile, or as it says, rotten, maybe we could find another word, the entry of the mind wouldn't be possible. The sixth factor, is the smell eater, the bardo being, must be free from the fault of not having accumulated the karma for being born as the child of that male and female. Maybe you could say, here it says they have to be free of not having. So again, it's kind of a negative, double negative. That's how it's said in the sutra. If we thought of it in a positive sense, it means you have to have the karma to be born as the child of that couple. Even if you're a bardo being and you might desire to be born to a particular couple, if you don't have the karma to be born to them, you don't have a karmic relationship with them, there's no way that the mind will enter into that. And the parents must also be without the fault of not having accumulated the karma for becoming its father and mother. Okay, so the parents themselves have to have the karma to be the parents of that. So, for instance, to be the parents of the Dalai Lama, actually, or a High Tulku or some saintly being, the people have to have a certain karma from their own side to be the parents. Let's say if a yogi or yogini who's going to be taking rebirth, they might have the ability to emanate almost anywhere, but it depends on the karma of the parents also.
What kind of karma, like? sometimes you have a child and the mum and the dad, and he doesn't get on with the father at all, so could it be just
Say again, Venerable, I couldn't catch the reason.
sometimes, many times we have children, mother, father, child, and the child all through life never gets on with the father. So I'm wondering when it says
Sometimes
karma,
not with the mother either.
or just for example, I'm wondering when it says karma, does it have to be a positive karma, a negative karma, or is it just some kind of action?
Well, it means the karma to be born to those parents. So there has to be some. Remember when Lama Yeshe had passed away, and his reincarnation was being sought, and there were various candidates that were being investigated as to whether they might be the parents, the people that were already, women that were already pregnant and so forth, or had already had a child. And then it would be investigated whether they had a particular karmic connection with Lama. That would be one thing to check. If they had no connection at all, of course, you couldn't tell. Maybe in the previous life they did. But in general, that's the kind of thing that's meant here. Whether the parents have the karma to be, they've created some karmic connection to be the parents of that child. So this is similar in meaning to the statement in a discipline scripture, in a scripture of the Vinaya. The Vinaya is the set of teachings the Buddha gave about the monastic discipline and discipline in general, that 6 states must be manifest. So that here it talks about 3 positive and 3 negative things. And in the Vinaya it talks about them all in a positive sense, I guess. A bardo being, a smell eater, who has these 6 conditions, sees in an illusory manner the father and mother lying together. Due to wanting to copulate, if it is to be reborn as a male, it desires the mother and wishes to separate from the father, maybe even has jealousy toward the father that it imagines with the mother. I don't think it necessarily means that it actually sees them actually in sexual union. It says it sees them in an illusory form, because this is something when one is about to take rebirth, one is drawn to that place. It may be already the sexual act has been accomplished and the sperm is on its way to meeting the egg, but they see this in an illusory way. If it is to be born as a male, it desires the mother and wishes to separate from the father. If it is to be reborn as a female, it desires the father and wishes to separate from the mother. So this is sort of, I'm not sure if you say impelling the gender, but sort of a manifestation of the future gender, that it has attachment for the opposite sex. Then when it begins to embrace the one that is desired, again in this illusory fashion, through the force of previous actions, previous karma, it does not perceive any part of the body except the person's sexual organ, whereby anger is generated. The desire and hatred act as the cause of death of the bardo being, and this bardo being enters into the womb. So that's what causes the death of the bardo being. So they would go through this, the dissolution of the 25 gross objects up to the clear light, and then from the clear light of the bardo being, immediately upon the arisal of the mind of radiant black near attainment, they would enter into the egg, the fertilized egg, because that would be the first moment of the birth. A person of little merit hears clamorous sounds and has a sense of entering into a marsh or a dark forest or the like, icky places. Whereas one accustomed to good deeds, good karma, has accumulation of good karma in past lives, hears peaceful and pleasant sounds and has a sense of going inside a nice house. This is some commentary that is added to the text. You see the slightly smaller letters, I think. Don't you? How are we doing? Just have a short time left. So let me see. Any questions so far from what we're what we're saying? Yeah.
It says the smell eater must be nearby and wish to enter.
Right.
How near is nearby? I mean, are we talking about within this realm of existence, within, you know,
I
room?
think because the smell eater will, the Bardo being will have to enter into the fertilized egg, so it has to be somewhere nearby. It can't have this sense of illusion of the bodies. I think if it's too far away, I'm not sure where nearby is, but there's some stories in the Lan Rim about yogis or yoginis that were trying to direct their rebirth, and they have to wait some time for the mother and father to be having intercourse so that they can enter into this. They don't necessarily manifest as a Buddha might just through the force of emanation. They might actually take rebirth, like in this tantric sense. So I'm not sure, if it has to be a certain number of paksha or miles or what. But generally, they would be because there might be many people in the universe at any one time in the 3,000 world system, the billion world systems, that one has a karmic connection with. When you think of all those worlds and all those people, if one is to be born as a human, let's say, or as an animal, let's say as an animal, there might be many possibilities. So it would depend upon where one finds oneself due to karma again, which one is going to be closest to. So just to make a connection to what there was a conclusion at the end of the last two chapters. Here, the conclusion of this, which we have not come to, of course, but just to see on page 67. As will be explained in the next chapter, these factors from the intermediate beings connecting to a new life in the womb through to and including taking rebirth are similar in aspect to the practice of bringing birth within the path as an emanation body in the practice of the stage of generation. They are also similar in aspect to the impure and pure illusory bodies of the stage of completion, during which either a coarse emanation body is assumed or one abides in the old physical aggregates, becoming an object of the ordinary eye. Thus, they are also the basis of purification by these bringings to the path. So let's just have another look here. We'll continue this next time. The Many Levels chapter of Asanga's Actuality of the Levels, one of Asanga's texts about the Bodhisattva levels and the hearer's levels, says that whereas the father and mother are not actually lying together at that time, the Bardo being, the smell eater, mistakenly perceives the semen and blood as such. Vasubandhu's commentary to the Abhidharma Kosha, however, explains that it actually sees the father and mother lying together. So we might, you can investigate that. It might seem more logical that it's as Asanga explains in the Mahayana Abhidharma, that it's the perception of the egg and the sperm, fertilized egg and sperm, that is misperceived as the mother and father. Sometimes in some of the tantras it says that the Bardo being enters into the father's mouth. Sometimes it talks about entry into the crown chakra. But eventually it's all going to end up in the fertilized egg. There may be various... Remember when we talked about the exit of the mind from the body? It has to come out of the heart chakra, right? But it might, in some cases, the Buddha explained that if it exited various of the orifices of the body that indicated the rebirth would be various states. So it may be a similar kind of thing. There can be various ways that the Bardo being can enter into the fertilized egg, through the father's mouth or through the crown, maybe through the mother's mouth, maybe directly into the womb. certainly that would seem to be the case, because if there are cases of humans, there are cases of humans having been conceived outside the womb, right? So certainly they didn't, I don't think they had to enter into the father's mouth first. They probably entered straight into that. That's my guess. Okay, so take a look at your examination, your midterm examination, next time on Thursday. Then we'll go over that a little bit. You ready? Okay, let's dedicate the energy that we created, the virtuous karma. So thinking that we have accumulated virtuous karma tonight, and in the past, we will accumulate in the future, to dedicate especially again, that this karma not ripen simply in some samsaric pleasure or high status that is not conducive to our spiritual path. It might, for instance, being born in a very rich family or beautiful can sometimes become an obstacle to our practice. But by praying in this way, dedicating in this way, whatever way that this karma ripens, may it become the cause of my developing the realizations of the two bodhicittas, the conventional mind of bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta, and all that continues from that, my practice of the bodhisattva path, meeting highest yoga tantra, achieving enlightenment quickly so that I can spontaneously and effortlessly benefit all sentient beings due to this karma. Having aspired in that way, having wished in that way, and try to seal the dedication in the emptiness of the three spheres.